like, oh, snap, this is real. Like, I can really do it, but I got to apply myself.
That recruitment process, what was that like?
No calls. I won't say it was like difficult to deal with because it wasn't like I was putting in so much work during that time to be like, why aren't they calling? Also, you got to realize like you're not as good as you think you are. Like I knew I was going to Washington State, but with that, you want to see if I can get drafted first. That was the main thing. Me personally, getting drafted in the first round is my goal. You know, especially in those top 14. That lottery, you know, that's my goal.
All right, we got Cedric on here. Really excited. Incredible journey. So let's just start off, you know, before you got to Central High School in Fresno, I think 24/7 select AAU. What was kind of the beginning of your basketball journey?
That's actually like a good question because I started off playing football. That was my very first sport. I think I started when I was like 4 years old. And you know, as a kid, I just love sports. So I was doing everything: football, soccer, basketball. But naturally, I just gravitated towards football and basketball. And me being a Laker fan and like Kobe was my guy. So like growing up in that time, you know, I didn't see Froby, but I saw him. So basketball was just always a part of my life as well. I think I made the difficult decision to stop playing football once I got to high school. So once I got, you know, was going to be a freshman, I told my parents, and like it was actually difficult not only for me but for them because they were so used to me playing both in the fall and the winter for sports that, and like football was my first sport, that it was like difficult for them to accept, especially my dad at first. But I told him, I was like, hey, I really want to stick with this basketball thing. So I think, you know, I think this is the best. And as for 24/7 Select, I got to give ultimate thanks to them, you know, for AAU. Like they're more, you know, smaller and a family run team, but they taught me a lot about myself, a lot of like what I do well on the court, not only to compliment myself, but to compliment other players. But for the beginning of my basketball journey, that's really like when it started seriously was, you know, turning into a freshman. And then, you know, I just let God, you know, guide me in the right path. You know, it's been a difficult journey, long journey. It's not over yet. But at the same time, I wouldn't change it for the world.
Gotcha. So it was the beginning of high school, really.
Yeah.
Okay, so you head to high school, you start to really devote yourself to basketball. Was there growing pains? Like, what was that process like?
I didn't play varsity until I was a junior. I was a freshman. I was only like 5'9", so I wasn't, you know, didn't have the basketball type body I have now. But I'll say the biggest like growing pain really was just developing because I knew how to work hard. I knew when to get like, you know, when I was in the gym to give it my all, to do all this stuff. But I didn't know necessarily hard work like I do now. You know, it's like putting in those extra hours, building a routine to know like this little by little by little, you would separate yourself. And by, you know, a period of months or a period of years or a period of even weeks, you're going to be so much better. So I didn't know that in high school, especially in the beginning of my high school journey. I was just out there playing, you know, playing for fun. You know, every kid has the dream, get to the NBA, but for me, it wasn't like I didn't take it as serious as I wish I would have. But at the same time, like I said, I wouldn't change the journey for anything. So yeah, freshman year, I played on the freshman team. Sophomore year, I played JV because from freshman to sophomore year, I grew from 5'9" to 6'2". And then after sophomore year, I got bumped up to varsity, you know. And then the good thing was going to varsity, that's where I built the confidence, you know, to not only be myself, but also be a leader and help lead other guys. And so that, you know, I would like to say I'm a natural born leader. I don't like to follow people because, you know, sometimes people can lead you in the wrong direction. But I'd say for me, that's where I learned really who I am as a player, both on the court, as, you know, skill set and mentality. So
Say your identity as a player was in high school.
probably do it all, you know, like I say that's one thing like throughout my entire basketball career I've been able to do is do it all, you know, defense, rebounding, block shots, you know. Obviously your game kind of changes as you change, especially in high school, because as your body grows, you know, you're able to do different things. So my game as a freshman was way different than my game as a senior. So as a freshman, I played point guard, right? And because, being 5'9", I played point guard and was a big facilitator. I didn't block shots as much. I rebounded the ball pretty well, but I wasn't a glass cleaner, as I like to say. But as my senior year came through, I say all those areas of my game developed even higher, as well as keeping the areas of my game from when I was a freshman, like being a point guard. So I was able to play pretty much all 5 positions if I wanted to.
Gotcha. So then moving on to that recruitment process, what was that like in high school?
Oh, no calls. No D1 calls. I'll say in high school, I didn't get my recruitment from high school. And I won't say it was like difficult to deal with, because even though but it wasn't at the same time, because it wasn't like I was putting in so much work during that time to be like, why aren't they calling? You know what I mean? So I thought I was good enough to get calls, but I wasn't putting in the off season work or stuff like that, like I should have been, like I'm doing now. But I'll say through AAU 24/7 Select, we played in big tournaments. We didn't play in, Modesto and Madera and stuff like that. We went to LA, we went to Arizona. Like those were regular tournaments for us. And then, we obviously went to Florida and national stuff like that. So through there, and one thing I always, thank them for, they filmed pretty much everything. They filmed all our games, they filmed all that stuff. So being able to throw tape out there, that's something I didn't realize was so important that it is now, was tape. Tape doesn't lie, and tape shows the truth and, all the areas of strengths and weaknesses that you have. So the tape was out there, and I'm not sure, specifically how it got to the coaches at Willamette, but that's where it got to. And I didn't want to go at first, but my mom and my dad convinced me to leave home, become myself, get my own identity, and and I always thank them for that, because not only did it teach me how to be a man, away from the house, away from home, because I'm in a whole different state, but it also taught me basketball wise, like, since I wasn't with anybody, I wasn't doing anything, just to like exhaust myself and like get in the gym, like drown myself in the gym. So Willamette, that's where I really learned, like, since I'm not doing anything, just go to the gym, shoot. And then as you see the results, you're like, oh snap, like I was doing this the other day, and it's getting better and better and better. So let's actually, do this for real, not just a waste time.
Gotcha. So then going into your freshman year, basketball player full-time for about 4 years at that point.
Yeah.
Like you said, having to, grow as a human being first, living by yourself for the first time. What were your expectations heading into your freshman season? And then kind of just walk us through that season.
Yeah. Me and my dad had this saying. He told me this before, I can remember, but he said, play for where you want to go and not for where you're at. So with this journey, knowing I was going D3, it was still like the available. You heard the stories, you seen certain people. Like one guy I like to look at is Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson went from D3 to Michigan, and now he's on the Heat. And so looking at that, you're like, oh snap, this is real. Like I can really do it, but I got to apply myself with it. So I'll say with that in terms of listening to my father and figuring out that this is a real reality, I think that was the most beneficial thing for me. And because when you got there, it obviously took some growing pains, to get used to that level. Because now you're not playing with 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. You're playing with guys as old as 23. So me going in, I started college at 17. I was young. So going in, and I'm playing against 21, 22-year-olds that are seasoned, know how the game works. It's a lot faster, it's a lot more physical, stuff like that. So, going into there, I just had to get used to it. And for me, I think I pride myself on never showing, I don't want to say quit, because I'm not a quitter, but like never showing quit. That I think that's the best thing. Like no matter if it's hard at that point in time or if it's easy at that point in time, I never really show it. And that's one thing that I pride myself on, is knowing I'm gonna get through it no matter what. So
what would you kind of say your identity was? We kind of touched on it earlier. It's like your play style as a freshman, and then taking that game having the opportunity to transfer up, and then shape-shifting your game again?
To keep the main thing, I just wanted to play. That was all it was. Coming into the freshman, you don't hear about a lot of freshmen succeeding the way I succeeded. And I credit that to my coaches, credit that to God, first of all, him being able to put me in no position, but also realizing that my freshman year is where I really realized like I can be that guy, I can be the one on the team, and not selfishly speaking, but like be the one on the team that makes it go, like we didn't have such a good record, but I'll say we improved upon before I got there, So for me, like the journey of figuring out who I was on a basketball court, like I knew I could do all these things. I knew I was versatile, but to take real control, especially as a freshman, is hard because you're playing with seniors, juniors, guys that have been there. So it's hard to really take control of that and like, all right, I don't care who you are. I know who I am, and I'm going to show you, And if you're better than me, you are. But in my mind, you're not. So I'm going to show you why. I think that's what I really developed. And for me, that's just how my game, thrived on the court. It wasn't the fact like I never went into the game thinking like, all right, I'm averaging this many points. I have to get to that number. It was like, no, what are we going to do to win? If I know, a team, we watch film, if I know a team likes to go to the basket on the left side, all right, cool. Just put myself in this spot to be able to deter shots. What we call it now is we call it activity points, but to gain activity points, deterring shots, blocks, steals, just being in the right spot at the right time. And then also on the offensive end, realizing what my advantage was. I was super athletic, I shot the ball pretty well. And then I like to get to my spots. I think that's one thing I've developed is getting to my spots, realizing these are shots I work on all the time. So being able to do that, and that's just how I thrive. And then for me, moving into D1, it was definitely, like you said, there's always growing pains. Whenever you move and whenever you're adjusting, it's always growing pains. But it was the same, keep the main thing. I wanted to play. I just didn't want to go there, and be like, okay, we see you as a 8 to 9 minute guy. There's 40 minutes in a game. Like 8 to 9 minutes, that's not a lot when you really think about it. And it goes by quick. So I wanted to do what I can to impact the team positively and also realize like, hey, we can use this guy for real. Like he can be one of the key guys that we need to play. We're starting or not. I didn't really care about that. I just wanted to play, so adjusting my game, realizing, all right, we have scores. We had a really talented team. We had, guys like Steele Vanners, Angelo Legley, Tyrese Davis, multiple talented guys. But for me, I just needed to figure out what I did that they didn't do and what they did that I didn't do and develop my game, So I think when it comes to changing, like you said, changing the, the way I play, the main thing is I just wanted to do what I can to play and get on the court. And whether that was scoring 20 points as a freshman in Willamette a game or scoring 8 points as a sophomore at Eastern per game, but averaging more rebounds and more steals and, stuff like that. So
Coach Riley, who to himself has an incredible journey, starts as a graduate assistant to a director of ops, assistant coach to head coach at Eastern Washington. He said that, in all his time in the basketball industry, you were, one of the hardest workers he's ever seen in the off season, with intent, not just like working hard without, maybe strategy to it, but like with intent, hardest work he's ever seen. What do you think enables that?
Well, first of all, that I'm glad he said that because, I pride myself on being a hard worker, but just who I am, how I grew up. My grandfather is an Olympian, and he tells me all the time, especially now that I'm like, it's, ever since I got into college, he always told me that stuff. But now that I know, like, I can make it, like, it's a legit thing. He always tells me, like, you need to not work hard, but fall in love with working hard. And that's something I think that I really, have learned how to do is fall in love with working hard. Like, I have a routine, and I'm at home now in Fresno, but last week I was with Coach Riley and my coaches, and we were having, meeting on what I was going to do during this time off. And, they wanted me to rest my body, but at the same time, I'm a basketball junkie, so I can't, stay away from the court for too long. But they were just saying, they were like, hey, man, like, whatever you do, we're proud of you in terms of like how hard you have worked, because we know that this routine that you've developed, you're so used to it that it will be hard for you to, get away from it. So for me, whenever I feel like, my routine is a lot different from other people, but I'll say whenever I feel like I'm not in it, it's kind of like, oh man, was I really productive today? But that's just because I'm so used to it. But I'll say that's just the way I'm bred. I kudos to my, my grandpa, my dad, my mom. They've instilled that hard work, I want to say gene in me, but the hard work mindset. And also you got to realize like you're not as good as you think you are, really. Like people, like you said, people have been tracking me, for the past 2-3 years now. I'm a senior, and whether it's good stuff they're saying, whether it's bad stuff they're saying, I need to stay even keeled and realize I'm not as good as I think I am. There's a level and there's a standard that I hold myself to, and that comes with, you don't just go in the gym and shoot without intent. You don't go in and shoot without, realizing, all right, what's the purpose of why I'm shooting? It's to make shots and, to feel good and stuff like that, whatever you're doing. And for me, it's just realizing that the hard work I put in is going to show, because you need to build good habits. That's one thing as a team we say all the time, build good habits, because those habits will end up showing no matter what. If you don't build a good habit of talking, you're not going to talk on the court. And if you silent on the court, you can't play. And so same thing with the work. If you go in there with a habit of just lollygagging, all right, I'm here early, cool, I'm first one in the gym, but I'm not doing anything with a purpose, you're going to practice without a purpose. You're going to play without a purpose. You know what I mean? So I think realizing just how the hard work should be done, and then what it takes to, improve upon that. I'll say one thing also I learned, and I credit this to Zach Gonzales, in my pre-draft stuff, is one of the first days, ever working out with him, he asked me, who are you doing it for? And he asked, the whole pre-draft guys in our group what they were doing it for. But that really resonated with me, because he asked, who are you doing it for? Because it's not just you in this journey. It's for everybody that supported you. It's even for the people that, doubted you, to realize you proved them wrong. So doing it for the people that supported you, doing it for the people that you really want to take care of, you have to do it not only for yourself, but for them, because they deserve it, And I think, like you said, that's just something that's been bred in me. It's not hard to do, really. Once you get used to it, it's not hard to do. After first 2 weeks, I say that was the most difficult part, just because it's waking up early, stuff like that. But after the first 2 weeks, it just becomes who you are, and it's been who I am since I don't even know 2022. So going on 3 years, 2025.
Let's break down that routine a little bit. So like this summer, during your summer session, what's your routine?
So wake up. So usually we have a schedule. It depends what the schedule is. Usually I'll say we start break, because we have a thing called Breakfast Club, which is basically a workout before, our workout. So say that starts at 9:15. I'll get in the gym 8:30, get my 35 minutes of either just me or me and a teammate just shooting, working on different shots, working on movement, working on off the dribble stuff, whatever I needed to work on based on the film of that practice or that week or whatever, my coaches felt were the best thing for me to work on at that time. And I can even tell them, what I felt like I struggled with. So work on that. And then, from 8:30 to 9, we'll say do that hard, and then boom, get a 15-minute break. Usually I'm stretching or doing something like that. And then from 9:15 to 9:50, we got Breakfast Club, which is really our position groups, workout. So you work on a lot of, like, what we do is a lot of finishing, a lot of, physical stuff, coming off ball screen, just different stuff, whatever, whatever they felt is needed at that time. And then after that, we got weights. You know, we go from weights from 10:15 to 11:15, 11:30, something like that. And then we get off and we have lunch. So, and then later we come back for practice around 3 o'clock, you know, and then from 3 to 4:35 we have practice. And then after that, I shoot some more, you know. It's really depending on the day, you know, because we have Wednesdays off. So sometimes Wednesdays I'll come in, you know, we obviously don't have practice. So, you know, I'll get to work out and then shoot later. Or Saturdays, you know, we'll have open gym. So maybe we'll play and then I'll shoot later or earlier. I don't know. You know, it really just depends. But I think priding myself on getting in the gym 2 to 3 times a day and not just the scheduled times, that's what I think I pride myself on.
You know, this past season, your junior year, obviously you made steps each year. What was did you have kind of a point mentally where you started to rise in season, the type of season you were having?
You know, I'll say the start of my season last year was horrible from my standard. You know, I too many turnovers. I wasn't shooting the ball like I wanted to because I think at first I was trying to force all the work that I put in. All the work I put in from early April to, you know, our first game was in November, I think, you know, whatever. So all that work that I was putting in, I really looked at it like, hey, man, why isn't this working? You know, trying to force it upon. But once I finally just let go, just let go of it. And I was like, man, let me just play my game. Let me just do me, not do what I want, pretty much what I was working on, like really focusing on that and just do what made me successful. And then naturally the stuff I was working on just, you know, came in. So once I had that mindset with it, that's where my season started to take off, you know. And from there, I'll say you asked a question where when did you realize it was like legit? I'll say that was the season before. I wasn't, you know, averaging in many points. I didn't have the ball in my hands as much, you know, whatever. But that's not a concern for me. I started getting, I don't want to say looks in terms of, you know, their scouts are coming to see me. They're coming to see teammates, you know, me as well, but our team. And then they're realizing like, hey, who is that kid? You know what I mean? Like, let me talk to him for a second, figure out who he is, talk to the coaches, figure out who he is, what he does best, stuff like that. And then that's where I think it took off. I don't really talk to, like, when they come to our practices and stuff, like, I don't introduce myself, hey, I'm Cedric, you know, but I don't really have conversations, I'll say, like my coaches do, because that's not my place at that point in time, I believe, you know, just being able to do what I do all the time. Your play shouldn't increase and it definitely shouldn't decrease depending on who's watching. You need to play 100% all the time, no matter, you know, what's happening. So from there, I think from my first year at Eastern, that's really where I realized it was legit. Because not only I didn't talk to them, but I was always told, like, whenever something happened, hey, this dude talked, you know, he's with the Nets and blah, 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 blah. So that's why I realized, like, hey, okay, you know, I'm not even having, you know, an outstanding numbers statistic season. So
The efficiency was crazy.
yeah, but to be able to improve on that will really skyrocket, you know. And so that's when I realized the first year at Eastern, and then the second year was really just solidify it. Because, you know, you can have a lot of, I say, one-hit wonders, you know, but to be able to solidify it and really prove to not only myself, but also the scouts and stuff like that, like, hey, I'm really who I am, you know, and I can improve on year to year. And that's what I pride myself on, improving year to year to year. So because if you just stay flat, you're not doing anything. But if you're slowly rising and you're not, you know, flattening out, you'll end up getting to that goal.
You know, you enter your name into the draft process. What was that like? You mentioned a little bit working out with Zach, Nick Clifford, among many others, AJ, really talented group. Maybe we just walk us through that process.
You know, I went to the draft because I was with Life Sports Agency, my agent Todd Ramasar. So yeah, the first part was picking an agent, and I'm not gonna lie, once I got in the meeting with Todd and, you know, a whole bunch of people that represent that agency, you know, Alexis, Dominique, John, you know, multiple people. Once I got in the meeting with them, you know, that meeting was 3 hours, 3 straight hours, but it wasn't 3 hours is just like, all right, when is the meeting over? It was 3 hours of engageful, impactful stuff. So once that happened, I looked at my mom and I was like, hey, like, you know what I mean? And I told my dad about it too. I was like, hey, I don't think anybody's beating them. So as soon as I picked them, you know, it was going to be tough to beat them, but nobody did. So I picked them. And, you know, that process for me was it was different in terms of now you're doing NBA level workouts. It's just more intense, you know, a little more skill work in terms of, you know, it depends who you are. Like Zach is under the Phil Handy coaching tree. So he's kind of got a routine. Like one of the big things they're spot on about, and one thing I need to improve on definitely is ball handling. Like they improved my ball handling like times a million. Like it's crazy because they taught me how to stay lower with the ball. Taught me, you know, different, you know, things that I can add to my game that has helped me from the time I've been there till now. So that process was really interesting with just working out. You know, I think I made really good friends, like you said, with Neek, AJ, Jamil, Art, Kaluma, Malik Lewis. Like all these guys are my homies now, you know, and to see them thrive as well is, you know, I'm grateful with that, you know. And so really that process of working out, figuring out like, all right, this is what the level of it is. And one thing I always credit Zach too is our workouts were harder than the draft workouts. Our workouts with him were harder than the draft workouts because he wanted to instill, I'm not gonna say fear, but he wanted us to be ready. So giving us that fear of like, dang, this is what it's gonna be like is really like really gave us a level, you know, a step ahead of the competition because when we got there, like my first workout with the Celtics, they, you know, all I hear is, oh, the Celtics workout is really hard, blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh, okay. So I'm going in preparing myself, but I'm like, what they did, we do it every day, you know, in LA. So when it came to those workouts and all the other workouts I went to, the credit I give Zach is, you know, a million times a million because what he did to prepare us for what we ended up eventually doing, I second in that.
So what was kind of your mindset going through that process? Obviously, you ended up following your coach to Washington State.
I entered the transfer portal before I went into the pre-draft process because obviously, you know, there's deadlines for all this stuff. But I went into the pre-draft process wanting to get drafted. Like it wasn't all right, let me get the experience and then go back to school. Like, no, I'm gonna try to get drafted. It's not one of those things where, all right, let me just feel it out. So for next year, it's for sure thing. No, let's try to get drafted. If it doesn't happen, I always have the option to go back to school. So that's what it was for me. And you know, during this time, the pre-draft mixed with the transfer portal calls is not a really it's a tiring thing, I'll say. So I thank my dad because I gave that to my dad. I said, Dad, I need you to take these calls, so I need to focus on this pre-draft stuff. He was like, and he was more than willing to do it. And, you know, he always let me know who called, what happened, and stuff like that. And I got multiple calls, but ultimately, when I went to Washington State with my coaches, like I already had that, you know, thing in mind. Like, all right, these are my coaches. You gotta like have a really good pitch to, you know, to take me away. But pretty much going to Washington State, it was just they laid out the plan. And you know, for me having 1 year left, I think that was probably the biggest factor in terms of if I'm gonna stay with them or am I gonna go. And you know, being at Eastern, that was really the question. Like, is he playing high enough level of competition? Like this and that and the third, you know. But you can't say that now. We're in the WCC. We're playing Gonzaga, St. Mary's, San Francisco, Santa Clara, all these teams that are, you know, if not NCAA team or March Madness teams, borderline. You know what I mean? So, and then Washington State the year before, they just made their run. So for me, that was a pretty easy decision in terms of like, all right, I got my coaches, I got the system, I know how I fit in the system. They're bringing in players to fit around me and the other guys coming from Eastern and play in the system the correct way. And bring guys, like you said, with good character, you know, respectful, high motors, love to work. Why go away from it? You know what I mean? Why go to a place where the coaches don't know me as well? They don't know me as a person. They know me as a player from film, but they don't know me as a person. So that was pretty easy decision. But once that happened, I made that decision to go to Washington State. I made it way before I announced it, like probably a month before I announced it. Like I knew I was going to Washington State, but with that, you want to see if I can get drafted first. That was the main thing. If I can get drafted, Washington State, no offense, but see y'all later. You know what I mean? So, but then eventually, what happened. I didn't end up getting drafted. I've definitely got interest from other teams that I've heard of. Todd always told me, he tells me all that's going on. He keeps you updated, and that's one thing I think, for him. But once that, like, the reality of me not getting drafted, I believe me personally getting drafted in the first round is my goal. Especially in those top 14. That lottery, that's my goal. So realizing that wasn't gonna happen, and it can happen next year if I go back to school, keep up with my routine and keep up with the upward path. That was my influence to go back to school.
So I spoke with Nick about that, kind of, going through a process like that and being close.
Yeah.
You have these workouts, you have interest, you're in that grind mode of day to day, really strong routine, you're close, and then making the decision, a measured decision to delay that gratification. What was that like? Because I know for Nick, he said that was the toughest part, being so close, but, kind of knowing in the back of your head, maybe it's better to delay the ultimate transition.
Yeah. I think it wasn't a difficult, it might be more difficult for Nick because he was, I'll say, closer than I was. I'm not speaking for him at all. He made his decision, and I know he's going to thrive, and he's going to be in that spot, the exact same spot next year. He's going to do even better, because I know him, and I know his work ethic and all that stuff. But for me, like you said, it was tough realizing the reality, but at the same time, that's what I really love about life and Todd and all these guys. They keep you in reality. It's not a false thing where it's like, hey, maybe you can get in the first round, so let's do it. You know what I mean? Like, no, man. Like, I'm talking to these teams. They see you as a two-way player right now. I know you're much better than that. You know you're much better than that. Let's go back to school, come back the next year, but don't go back to school without a plan. We got to have a plan, knowing what needs to be done in order for you to get to this spot elevated next year. So having that in reality, it made the decision a lot easier because it's like, all right, the realistic part is won't get drafted where I want to this year, but the positive in that is I have another year to go back to school, thrive even more with a plan, because now I know what these teams are looking for. You're getting this feedback, whether of what they want you to do better, what you're doing well and you can improve on, and what you're just spot on good at. You know what I mean? So having that made the decision for me at least a lot easier. Like, all right, I can let's just do it. You know what I mean? So
Understood. So building off of that, skill set wise, you've shown a lot through college. 3 different seasons, 3 very different, profiles of like the play types you're playing through. Obviously proved to be pretty versatile defensively, both on the ball, off the ball, help side, getting blocks, getting steals, turn defense to offense, grab and go, playing off spot ups, playing with the ball, using your size, like you said earlier in your college career, and then building off of that, having the footwork, I like you got the spin move off the bounce, spin and using your size as a slasher. What do you think is next for you? Like you said, you're building towards next year. You've obviously proven to be efficient, versatile. That's kind of like the buzzword. Everyone wants to be versatile. 7-foot wingspan like you have, shooting the ball at a high clip. What's next?
To everything I'm good at, get even better at it. And then everything I struggle with, make it a strength. I think, like you said, I've showed versatility, and one of the biggest things for me is defense. Because in the league, you're not a lot of players go in there and you're the star player right away. It's not going to happen for 95% of people. So for me, realizing, okay, I'm probably going to be I don't want to say a role guy. There's a word Todd used for it. I forgot. That's the best way to put it. Is a role guy, defense, spot up, stuff like that. For me, like you said, my versatility is one of my greatest weapons. And even though I use that defensively, I don't think I played as well as I can on defense this past year. I know to improve upon that, improve the intensity, improve the just anticipation. Obviously you're in a defensive scheme, but for me as a player, as an individual, taking pride and realizing like I'm guarding him. Like that's their best player. I'm guarding him. He's the main focus in their offense. I'm guarding him. To know that, to be a two-way, a legit two-way. When you look at Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, these guys are, there's many others. But if these guys are legit two-way players that can give you a bucket and prevent you from getting the bucket, you know what I mean? So, and that's what I see myself as, and I want to develop to be, because that, in my mind, in the NBA, those are the most lethal guys.
What would you say is maybe the more underrated aspect of your game, or something maybe you're more excited to channel this next season?
I'll say just by the stats, my playmaking and facilitating, I'll say my assist numbers don't show it as much, and that's something, definitely want to improve on, especially the assist to turnover ratio. But I believe I'm a really good playmaker. I get guys in the right spots. I get guys, I make it easier on people. That's what one thing I like to do is make it a lot easier on people. And I think that's a part of my game that's really been, underrated, or not as well shown as the other parts of my game. And also, my defense as well, realizing like, hey, this, like, I'm going to shut you down. Like that's my focus, my mentality going into every game. I'm going to shut you down. It's not going to be, okay, let me play defense for 20 minutes out of the 40 minutes. No, I'm going to play 40 out of 40. And that's something I've been working on, and that's something that, I need to pretty much hone in on this upcoming season.
You mentioned a couple guys. Who are some players maybe you don't model your game after? I'm not really a fan of, pro comps and stuff like that, but maybe some guys you look to learn from, channel different areas. Maybe you just enjoy watching them.
Kawhi Leonard, Mikal Bridges, these guys being lengthy and defensive stoppers, and also, can get buckets on offense. I watch a lot of Shea now. I didn't at first when he was with the Clippers, but now that he's with the Thunder, I watch a lot of Shea now. And then I think for me, I always watch Kobe. Like it's, unfortunately, he's gone now. But that being my idol, I watch less of his highlights and more of like his mentality stuff. Whenever he's telling a story about his mentality, whenever he's, it can be a highlight mixtape, but have that like narration of him explaining how his mentality was. I watch a lot of that. Like that's really what I model my game after. I'll probably say Mikal Bridges, Kawhi, Shea are the top three players I watch in terms of like pro comping to me. And then Kobe's mentality stuff. Obviously, I watch Kobe highlights. His footwork was impeccable. Being able to learn different things from him. But his mentality stuff, whenever it's him narrating, whatever it is about his mentality, that's what I watch most of the time.
Yeah, it's hard to beat between the surgical nature on the court and off. Going through this process you've gone through, the journey's far from finished. But someone who might have been in your shoes younger, maybe they feel unheralded, maybe they feel overlooked. Maybe they're at the point you described where they think they're overlooked, but they haven't discovered what that work really looks like. What would your advice be to them?
Keep pushing. I think you never know who's watching. And the night that I was, got recruited by Eastern, we were playing Portland University. We're playing them in one of those D1, D3 games. We're going to get killed. I could have went out there with the mentality like, all right, I know we're going to lose. So, like, why even really try if we're going to lose? But, like, I'm not going to try if I know we're going to lose by 30. No, it's like, no, go out there, show what you can do, show that you belong at this level, and try to win. That's the main thing. Nobody plays to lose. I play to win, no matter who we're playing. We can be playing the Lakers. Like, I go in there with the confidence we're gonna win this game. And that's me as a person. And I think just building that mentality and building that persona of yourself, that's really beneficial. That was really beneficial for me. So as it comes for the younger generation, for the younger kids, I got cousins that are coming up in the basketball world. So if you ever feel overlooked or you ever feel overshadowed by certain people or certain players or whatever it may be, just keep pushing. Don't compare yourself to others. And it's hard to do. It's really hard to do because as humans, that's what we like. That's what we do. We compare. But don't compare yourself, because if you do that, you're never gonna see the positives in yourself. Stay realistic, realize you're not as good as you think you are at that moment, and you can always get better. But also don't compare yourself and don't just see all your negatives. See your positives too. I think I like to celebrate, like you said, I'm one of the more efficient players in the country. I celebrate that. I thrive on that. Like, all right, let's keep this up. This is the way I play. Let's keep this up. But at the same time, realizing I'm not the number one efficient player, that's what drives me. You know what I mean? So realizing I can be the number one. I'm really good at being efficient, but I can be number one. So that's something that drives me.
What do you think? You touched on a little bit, you value your family, value growth, pushing yourself. What kind of defines you off the court? What's your why?
My family. That's my why. I think, I was just talking to my mom about this the other night, and she told me, she was like, son, you're in a place where I didn't, it wasn't unimaginable, because you obviously, don't kill your kids' dreams, but it was a place that wasn't really, I don't really know what the word is, but it's like, I'll just say realistic at an earlier point in time than it is now, and then she asked me a whole bunch of questions on, like, what would you do, if you had money and stuff like that. And so I just told her, and then most of my answers were, taking care of my family, because those are the people that supported me. Everybody who supported me in this journey, I really give thanks to. Like, it's like, I can't thank them enough, because through all the struggles, through all the triumphs, all that stuff, me, being super emotional, me being not emotional, whatever it was, they always stayed in my corner and allowed me to stay even keeled. Like, they never let me get too high, never let me get too low, but realizing they always, keep me on track for realizing who I am. So my why is them, and, them making sure they know from me personally that I can't thank them enough for what they've done. So I think just knowing that I'm so close, and I'm almost there. Like I told my mom, making it is just half of the dream. That's one of the hardest parts, is to make it. But once you make it, you just don't make it and it's like, all right, it's over. I got to where I wanted to go. No, you want to thrive. And for me, I want to be the best I possibly can, not only as an individual, but in this game of basketball as a whole. And so that comes at the second part of the dream. Like, the first part is to make it. The second part is to thrive in it and become one of the best. And that's what drives me every day. My family's my why. Proving people wrong is also a why. No matter if it's, they believed from the start, or if they're a bandwagon, they believe now. Proving all the doubters, proving all, people who've ever said anything negative why, and proving to myself, like, back in freshman year, I didn't see myself here. Now I'm a senior in college. I'm so close, and I'm gonna get it. So,
a lot of people have that goal of maximizing their strengths and eliminating their weaknesses. What do you think allows you to have that clarity to actually achieving it? Because, like, that can be overwhelming for some people, where they're trying to balance a bunch of different things in the off season. But it seems like you've really streamlined that, and each year you've kind of stacked, and, like you said, suppressed some of your weaknesses.
Yeah, it's just keeping the main thing. I think for me, having the clarity of, like, I know what I need to work on, and I know what I do well, but not letting that steer you away from what made you successful in the beginning. I think one of the biggest things, like, I know is coming off of ball screens for me, and that's just one thing for me. Coming off of ball screens, definitely need to work on it, and I have, but I'm not gonna make that my only focus. You know what I mean? So because then that can be overwhelming because when you mess up, it's like, dang, I've been working on this the whole time. It's kind of like beginning of my season last year. Like I didn't have the ball in my hands my first year. Second year, I had the ball in my hands way more. So doing that at the start, it was like, all right, this is what's expected of me. Let's do what I've just been working on. So I kind of steered away from what really made me successful in the first place. So making sure you know what made you successful, and then doing that while ingraining everything else, slowly but surely, it's gonna come. Like for me, I know what I need to work on, but it's not going to steer me away from what I do well and what I've improved upon in the past. And then slowly but surely, that stuff will come because it's crazy because you can realize how much better of a basketball player you are just by putting in the work. Like for me, I realized how much better of a basketball player I am now versus my first year at Eastern and my first year with Willamette. Like I remember I was talking to one of my teammates. I was like, man, me now would kill me in my freshman year, like bad. So it's just making sure, like you said, keep pushing, and then also realize keep that open mindset of realizing you know what you can work on, but don't let that steer you away from what you're doing successful in the first place.